Okay, looks like we're live. Finally. Sorry if you're watching this recorded. Please fast forward this bit. For some reason today, YouTube doesn't want to play. Why does YouTube not want to play? Okay, it says we're live now. Okay, finally, there we go. We're live. Right, so welcome everyone. I've got a new kind of format today. The last few videos I've just been scrolling around looking at some different boats on the internet, but today I've taken 3 of those boats and compare. And the challenge today is, if you had $1 million to get your boat, buy a boat and get it set up how you want, what would you buy? And I've got 3 pretty interesting options. 2, well, they're all different in their own ways, and we'll just get into that. But basically there's 3. We've got 2 single engines and 1 doubled. The shortest is 17 meters, longest is 24 meters. The lightest is 42 tons, the heaviest is 99 tons, and the purchase price, or the asking price on the internet, is low 495,000 euros, or about 600,000 US dollars, and the upper is 690,000 euros, about 840,000. So we're going to work in euros here. So within that, you've got maybe 500,000, 300,000 to do some work on the yacht to get it set up what you want. So what have we got in the selection? So this is the first. If you have watched any of the other videos, which chances are you haven't, because hardly anybody has, this is the first one. Now this is a converted Dutch steel trawler from about 1965. It's a pretty big boat, and we'll get in the details. But they're asking 495,000 euros for this boat, about 600,000 US dollars. So that's the first option. So this is an old option, but it's very large, very weighty, and there's a lot of pros about this boat that I really like. Okay, so that's option 1. Option 2, this is a Dutch steel, it's a passage maker trawler designed for long distance journeys. They're asking 595,000 euros from the late 90s. Very nice boat. So it's a pilot saloon boat, pretty sizable. And just like to say that I've actually been on this boat inside and kicked the tires, so to speak. This one I've seen from the outside, and then the third one is a Nordhavn. Now, interestingly enough, my Nordhavn video actually got some views, so I think people are picking up on that keyword. So I chose Nordhavn because I do quite like this boat. This is a boat that really got me interested in motor yachts, explorer yachts. I just love the design. You get into the detail. This is a very well thought out boat. Unfortunately, it's been discontinued, so you only get old ones. And I don't know, I would like to find out what happened to the designer of this boat, because Nordhavn's gone in a completely different design direction, which personally I don't like the look of the boats anymore, but they've kept their heritage. The layout and a lot of the design features are very similar. So it was just aesthetics. Okay, that's fine. So we'll see if we can get into a bit of detail here. So what I'm going to do, I'll just try and make that as big as I can. So these are 3 boats. So the Dutch boat, two Dutch boats, steel Dutch boats, and it's an American brand, Nordhavn, but the yachts are generally built in China, I believe, could be Taiwan. So the Van der Molen from 1965 with a major refit in 77-80. So that's when they converted it from a fishing trawler into the yacht you see today. The Altena yacht, launched 1999, had a refit in 2019. I think that was mainly electronics. Then you've got the Nordhavn 97 and you've some sort of refit in 1819. The information on this one, I don't have so much, but there has been some upgrading. So dimensions, and I'll forgive some things are missing there on a future slide. So the trawler, this North Sea trawler, 24 meters by about 6 by 3, let's say. The altena, 18 by 5 by 1.6. And then we've got the Nordhavn, which is 19 by about 6 by 2. So interestingly enough, the trawler is 4 meters longer than the Nordhavn, but has about the same beam. And this is 2.9 and versus 2 meters, and you got 1.6. So, like I said, with these, it's an interesting choice because I picked them for two reasons, really: for their capabilities and then also for their price point. But you see that it's really hard to group them. You think they're going to be really different, like especially the most obviously different one is the trawler. But the trawler does share some similarities with the others, we'll see. So engines, so one Mitsubishi 365 horsepower. So again, I think this is an original engine. Not sure if this is from 65 or the late 70s. They could have, when they did the refit, it's possible they repowered. The alternative, you've got two John Deeres, so it's 2 times 175, so it's about 350 horsepowers. And then you've got the Nordhavn, and they generally use the luggers. If I've done my conversion right, this is a 490 horsepower engine. Fuel, we get a huge difference here, huge difference. So the trawler has 18,000 litres. And this is going to speak, when we get to the conclusions, you're going to see that this is a cross-ocean boat. It can go very, very long distances, be self-sufficient. You don't have to worry about that. So that is really one of the advantages. And for that price point, for the boats, for the owner boats, where you buy it for your own use, you're probably not going to find anything with 18,000 litres. Really, these are sort of industrial size figures, I guess. But in this sort of, let's say 18 to 25 meters, it's going to be pretty rare, if at all. The altena is like 5,300 liters, and the Nordhavn 8,000 liters. And one thing I think you might notice about the Nordhavn is, I think they've done a really good job of finding that sweet spot where everything is just well thought out. And I think the fuel is a good example. A lot of boats, 5,000-6,000 litres of fuel is pretty normal. Nordhavn have squeezed in a few thousand litres, which does give you that extra flexibility, that extra safety, which allows you to do more with your boat. Now the fuel, these are really rough estimates. I just went to a website to do fuel consumption, and look, I don't know, I assume the engine's running about 1,500 RPM, which is, sort of a cruising kind of use. And I've made some very broad assumptions. So I think, maybe the Van der Molen is 2.5 litres per nautical mile, the Altena 2 litres per nautical mile, and the Nordhavn 2.2 litres per nautical mile. Now, I could be wrong. Actually, I think I'm probably underestimating, if anything. But the point here is, I think we're looking at comparative. If it was you buying these boats and you had to know exactly how much fuel you're using to get across an ocean, yep, you would not rely on my figures, that's clear. But just, broad kind of rough estimate, order of magnitude estimate is, you got about 5,800 nautical miles for the trawler. Huge, you can almost go back and forth across the Atlantic. Altena about 2,000 miles, and again the Nordhavn 2,900 miles, which when we get into some of the assessment on range, you're going to see the advantages of that. Now we jump forward. Why am I... Oh yeah, well, what we're going to see here, so we're going to do a bit of evaluation at the end. I'm looking at these boats because they should be theoretically cross ocean, cross the Atlantic, do some global travel, and I'll assess them on their range, the motion of the boat, the comfort on board, and obviously the motion of the boat has a huge impact on your comfort. So we're not talking about comfort of the motion, but the comfort of the interior. Stores, how much storage is on board, and then reliability and redundancy. So that's about safety and making sure you get to the other side. We might just, yeah, okay. So first assessment. So we're in the assessment stage now. The first assessment. So these are my calculations. So I've left little pictures off the top, unfortunately. This is the trawler. So maximum range about 7,200 with a 20% reserve. I'm putting that at 5,000, let's call it 5,800 nautical miles. And then you got, say, 2 and let's say 3 to be rough. Now, I've done 3 routes. So one's a direct route across the Atlantic from the Canaries to St. John's. It's about a 3,000 nautical mile. Your trawler is going to make it no problem. And like I said, you know, you're going to have almost go back again. You know, you probably could actually, assuming my consumption figures are right. Your altena cruiser is not going to make it. You're going to fall short, both on the maximum range and then on the reserve range. So here, and I think this sort of summarizes the boat. It's probably good for coastal. I think in Northern Europe, if you're doing the coast of Europe, the Mediterranean, up to the Nordics, it'll be a really great boat. Well, we'll see on the next one. If you go by the Azores, you probably could use it to get across to North America and the Caribbean, but it'd be a slightly more of a jumping thing. And then here, I've put a question mark here. Could you do the route direct? I think if you know, again, there's a big assumption there about my consumption figures, but I put a question mark, but it's probably a yes. And if you look at the max range, 3,600. So the question there would be, you know, how much reserve do you want to have in your tanks? 20% is pretty generous. You could probably quite safely remove that, but that's up to the skipper. So of the 2 boats, the Nordhavn and the Trawler can do direct crossings. But if we took a different route, say we went from Lisbon to the Azores and then the Azores to Bermuda, so it's a pretty short jump, 785 nautical miles from Lisbon to the Azores. So these boats, say running, let's say 8 knots, could be running 6 to 8 knots. Let's say 8 knots, so 24 hours, 160, so say 200 nautical miles. So this is about a 4-day trip on the boats. All of them can very easily do it, and they're built for that. So, you know, the Altenas are CEA, which is ocean going rated. The Nordhavns, I'm pretty sure, you know, these Nordhavn N62s have done that crossing. And then you go 2,000 nautical mile from the Azores to Bermuda, and all of these are within the safety margin. So obviously the Altena, you're very, you know, you're basically just inside it. That's almost the extent you'd want to travel with a reserve, whereas the others, you got, you know, plenty of space. So the goal here is not to give you a conclusion. I think this is just to share with you how you may assess a boat if you were looking at it, and it depends what you want to do. Now, not many people are, you know, going to cross the oceans. So, you know, the Altena for, you know, if you were in Holland or anywhere and you wanted to use your boat on a regular basis, fine, you don't need the ocean crossing capabilities. And then, you know, with the Trawler, it's a very different boat. It's a lot bigger boat. You're not cruising the canals of Holland in your converted fishing trawler, so that limits your range. So it's a horses for courses kind of thing. Just gives you an assessment. So I want to look at the motion of the boat. This is a picture of the Trawler out of the water. As you can see, it's got a very traditional shape. It's got like nice curve, nice shoulders on the boat. Canoe stern, which is you know, a nice, well, for aesthetically is nice. Pretty good for the water runoff. And it, like I said, it's got the traditional keel. You got the steel. I don't know what you call it, the keel here, not part of the hole at the bottom, which gives you a lot of good protection for your rudder and your propeller. So these holes, a bit more traditional, pretty nice in a seaway. A lot of the modern boats, which may be a bit more shallow, with chines or different things, may not move as nicely. So especially from a roll perspective, this should be a pretty stable, nice moving boat. It's got some fixed stabilizers on the side of the hull, which obviously helps with your rolling. And speaking to the broker, well, I mean, you only hear good things from brokers, of course. They reckon the owner had this out in the Bay of Biscay, turned the engines off in some rough weather to sort some things out, and even not under power, the motion was comfortable. So 100 tons, 3 meters deep. You've got a lot of boat in the water. That's pretty nice. Now, this is I couldn't find the exact model that I'm comparing, but this is another Altena cruiser. I think this is a 50-foot one, a bit smaller, but you can kind of see the style. You've got a chine, you've got some hard, looks like 2 hard chines in there, fixed stabilizer on this one. The other one has active stabilization, which we'll get into in a second. And then you just look at the proportions of the hull. You've got about a third here up to the freeboard, up to the top of the railing, and it just looks like a shallow boat, so you really don't have a lot in there. Whereas this one, you can see the comparison, say, to the gunnel here. That looks about twice as deep as to the gunnel, roughly, which is an interesting comparison there. It's reversed. So the rule kind of is, for hull stability, the more boat in the water, the better. So if you think of a rough ocean, if you've got foam and the disturbing water at the top, below that there is deep water. And if you've got a keel in the still water below the rough stuff, you're generally going to be okay. And this is one of the criticisms of modern sailing boats with the fin keels, because the majority of the hull sits on top of the rough water, so they're very much affected by that, and they only have a small part of the hull, which is the keel, in the water, which provides a bit of lateral stability. But you really need that hull to provide resistance for rolling, which this one has, and this one's not going to have so much. Now, if you look at the Nordhavn 62, this is it in some reasonably rough weather, and we'll get into the rolling at the moment, but I just want you to take a look at that. People watching this are probably very aware of how a boat moves on the water. They've designed this so your steering and all your living is pretty much in the part of the boat which moves the less on a pitch. So you're going to pitch, if you've ever stood on the front of a boat, even in not so rough weather, this moves up a lot, like meters up and down. With this part of the boat, this is kind of like the pivot point around here. So you should have quite a nice steady backwards and forwards motion, even in some pretty rough weather. So this is the one thing I like about the Nordhavns, especially on these style yachts. They do have some more sort of coastal boats and smaller boats, which may be sort of more weekend day trips. But for their serious boats, they design it on the same principle, where they've got the saloon, the steerage, everything sort of towards the back for more comfortable, and that's a really nice design feature of the Nordhavns. So the pitching on this is going to be a lot more comfortable. I just want to compare it to this. So this is a pilot saloon, the pilot here, the saloon there, and so it's a little bit rough, shall we say, but they're going over wave. You think about I need to get some videos at some point. The motion here, they're moving through a lot of vertical, whereas back here, I'm guessing the pivot point for the pitch is probably going to be about here. So if you're in the middle of the boat, you're fine, but if you're up forward, you're going to be moving a lot. And at sea, that can tire you out. That can tire you out. A lot of the reasons they say for on smaller yachts, the crew abandoning ship is just the violent motion of the boat. It wears people out. They feel more insecure. The boat is probably fine, but it just feels like it's not. These are a bit different than a small 30-foot fiberglass sailing yacht, but just as a sort of a maybe need some experience seeing how the boats move. You're going to be more comfortable on this in rough weather from a pitch perspective than this, basically being thrown up and down on the waves. This might even be a Nordhavn too. The other thing I want to do for the N62, you can see they've got these, there's a proper name for them, plates. So when they're at anchor, and I believe, I'm not 100% sure, I believe it's possible to use these when you're under motion. You put out these booms, drop basically they're large plates, which will either just sit there under the water and they'll prevent the boat from rolling because they offer resistance. In addition to the hull and the inertia that just the weight and the hull of the boat has, these plates offer drag in the water and keep your boat from minimise the roll on the boat. So that's a nice touch. And there's a big difference between active and passive stabilization. So active, you've got your fins, they're moving constantly. There is potential they can wear out and break. There's actually a really great video of, I think, the first Atlantic crossing on Nordhavn, and on one of the boats, their active stabilization, something went wrong there. I think they fixed it, but they said they were very, very uncomfortable. And again, if we go back to the traditional style boats, from the whole shape, you get so much more stability. You don't have to rely on systems that break for your comfort because it's built into the design. That's really great. Where a lot of modern boats, they can compensate for, let's say, non-seaworthy designs, or they're compensating some of the motion of the boat for other advantages, like they want to go faster. So if you've got a nicely designed hull which is going to move well in the water, nothing's going to break unless the hull breaks, right? Well, then you've got different issues to worry about. This one here, it's a system. It can break. Cables can break. The booms can break. Whole things can break. But again, you're not relying on mechanical action to move it. So it's just wear and tear, and as long as you maintain it, change your cables every number of years, etc., you should be okay. Whereas the active ones, they're very good, don't get me wrong, but just like all systems which have a lot of movements on a journey, so the same for your autopilot, those things are wearing, and you've got to watch the cogs that they don't wear down. That's a really classic one to lose yourself steering in the middle of the ocean because you didn't check. You've had it on board for a number of years and used it a lot, and it just breaks down one day through to lack of maintenance. These require less maintenance. Now the danger here is if these plates do come out of the water and swing around, they can damage the boat, and if it's a fiberglass boat, that can be problematic. On a steel boat, okay, you're going to get a dent, lose a bit of paint, but that's about it. I don't know how often that happens, the risk of that happening. I know the principle on them, but I don't have any experience. So it's just something else to think about. And then under the boat here, you see bulbous keel, and you see here again, like just the dimensions. It's maybe this is from the bottom of the keel, it's about 50-50, and the bottom of the hull, maybe that's 30% up to the, in comparison to the freeboard. So again, it's a modern yacht. It's fairly shallow, and you can see at the rear end, it sort of really gets flat. So that's going to be your I call them your ducktail. It really starts to flatten out. And I know, I think it was in the 80s, they built these new trawler yachts, I think in the northwest of the US. And I think they also had some similar problems in Alaska, where they had nice big bows, but they had the transom was very flat underwater, and they actually had a number of capsizes with them. Now I don't think this is anywhere close to it. If you look at if you know the boats I'm talking about, you can look at it. But again, it's not bad. They've got great reviews. You can follow blogs on these boats, and people really like them, and I think they're pretty safe. But it's just in comparison to the trawler, all the modern boats tend to have less in the water. It's just something to consider. And again, you're going to make the decision if you get your boat. Is pros and cons, and there's no such thing as a perfect boat. It's all compromise, but it's just something to consider. And when you do look at boats on the internet and you do go to buy them, like, you really should start with the hull shape. That's hugely important because that's the bit that sticks in the water, right? And it's going to define a majority of your experience on the boat. Flat water, it's almost like who cares? But when things get rough and you really need to rely on the design of the boat to keep you safe, you know, your hull is really ground zero. And a lot of boats, when they're sold, you know, even on, I looked on, well, I've looked on different websites for the hull shape, and a lot of people don't actually show you them, and you have to ask. And then if you want stability data and these sort of things, which you should ask for on a new boat, that's hugely important. Sometimes it can be really tricky to get that stability data out of it, because, you know, to do their CE mark in Europe, they have to do stability tests, and you need to know what they are. And at some point, there's a tipping point. Most boats are not designed to come back upright, you know, over a certain angle, the angle of vanishing stability. They will, you know, turtle or end up on their side. So you need to know that. And there's a huge difference between weighted stability and hull stability. So a lot of modern yachts rely on a weighted keel to keep them upright. I know nothing about the stability of this boat and how they designed it, but just, you know, just looking at those dimensions, you know, you've probably got, compared to the top, you got about 20%, a quarter of the boat. So they're going to be doing some weighting there to keep you, you know, keep you upright. We won't get in that too much. Just last thing I'll say, there is a brand which was very popular up till the point they got the weighting wrong, and when it launched, it capsized this boat. And I think people really brought to mind the importance of hull design. So just something to consider. Now, how I sort of assess that then on the motion, displacement is really important. So generally, the more displacement you have, the more inertia you're going to have to overcome, you know, the forces of the ocean. So a heavy boat, especially if you're in a displacement class boat, the better it is. You should just roll less and be affected less by what's outside the window. So at 100, nearly 100 tons, the trawler is way ahead there. The altena is at 42, and the Nordhavn's at 66. So something to consider. I don't know why I put that green and that one orange. Probably should have been, you know, green and then orange. But one thing I haven't done here is any ratios. Maybe I'll do that next time. There's a bunch of different ratios you can use to assess a boat, and just taking the absolute measurement is a bit it can be misleading, because, you know, obviously a 99 ton boat that's 200 meters long is going to be pretty light, and a 99 ton boat which is 10 meters long is going to be very heavy. So it's all has to be in relationship to the boat. In terms of the pitch, I've given that to the Nordhavn, just given the position. Like, I think they've got it over the pivot point. I'm pretty sure that's why they designed it that way. So, you know, in the saloon and while you're steering, you should have pretty nice motion there, or move as little as possible. Whereas both of these boats, the altena and the trawler, they very much at the front of the boats, they're going to be moving up and down. Natural roll, what's the word, or just a protection against rolling from the design of the hull. Given that to the trawler for the reasons we've already discussed, and the other ones I can't really distinguish between the two, so we'll put them equal. You know, maybe a rounded hull is going to be slightly better than a chined hull, but don't know. So compensated rolling, so this is with some stabilization. Trawler comes last. It's got some stabilizers on there, fixed in place. But then you've got the altena, it's got active stabilization on it, which is pretty good. It's going to hold your boat in place quite nicely. And then here you've got on the Nordhavn, you've got the trawler plates, which you can tow. But again, I think just the one with those on really rough weather, when the sea's moving around, you may not want to use them for the risk of them popping out of the water and swinging onto your boat. But again, you'd have to do some compensation. So I'm going to give the motion. I'm guessing that the trawler is going to be, just given the weight, given the whole design, is going to have some pretty nice motion, and I've heard that it does. But a second, it's a pretty close second to the Nordhavn for the pitching, and also, you know, the weight compared to the, you know, so this is 30% the weight of the big boat. This is half. I need to do the ratios. The weight to length ratio is going to be pretty nice. And it's got a rounded keel, on it, so you know, why not? So 1, 2, and the 3 again. I'll do this one last in my view. Could be wrong, let me know. So the comfort here, so this is crew comfort. Lounging, so here this is an important one. When you at sea you want to relax, you need a nice place where you can just hang out. It can be either in your crew, in your quarters, on the deck, or somewhere inside in the saloon. The trawler, I'm going to put it pretty low. It's got 2 comfortable seats, which are single seats, but no really big sofa or lounging area. So a lot of the boats have a big L-shaped sofa. It's got room for one. I'd put one in, but that's low. The deck areas, you've got, you know, a couple of benches. I wouldn't say they're great places to sit. So there's not really a lot of places, and the cabins are below deck. There's no portholes or anything, and they're okay, but it's a bit sparse. So, you know, it's not really the most luxurious yacht in the world. The Nordhavn and the Altena, they've got some pretty nice interiors, you know, again with different social spaces. So I think the Altena, you've got your pilot house, you've got the saloon, and if you go down, you've got a kitchen with areas. Here you've got the steering. I think there's a little area behind there, and saloon, so the pilot seat on your saloon area. So again, you know, maybe a little bit tighter on here, but comfortable. Privacy. So can you get away from other people, from other crew members when you're on the boat? I'm going to put this as high because it's a pretty big boat. You got like 2 decks. You've got, you know, the cabins. In the cabins, you know, it's a very spacious boat. Now, obviously, you got a lot more length on the boat, which is one reason, but it's pretty high. These two average, you know, for a couple on these boats, it'll be fine. You've got a family of 5, or you got you and your friends, 5 or 6 people on board. You know, you may be living in each other's pockets. Yeah, you will be on the trawler as well to some degree, but maybe less so than the other ones. Climate, fine. They've both got heating, cooling. Outdoor, yeah, large spaces could be made more comfortable. There's a lot you could do to actually make them more comfortable. This one really has limited outdoor space. I mean, you've got the steering on the top, flybridge steering, but the decks are really just more for, you know, storing dinghies and different things. It's you know, apart from the flybridge, there's not a lot of outdoor space. Here, this is actually really good because you've got below, you've got a nice covered rear deck for dining or just hanging out or fishing. And then you've also got, I believe, a small deck out the back there. So, you know, and you got the Portuguese bridge as well, so you can actually stand forward and see directly out with unobstructed visibility. So that's actually really nice, that one. And the cabins, these ones, there's no porthole, so it's, you know, you're just down there for sleeping. I don't mind that personally. It depends on what your goal is as a cruiser. So if you're just there for sleeping or changing or whatever you're doing, it's fine. Here, this one again, it's okay. I wouldn't put it as great. Both these are okay. So, you know, maybe slightly more luxurious than the trawler. So comfort, I'm not really going to put a score on these. It really depends on what you want. My feeling sort of goes to the Altena is designed to be a little bit more luxurious than the other boats. So probably the Altena, the Nordhavn, and then the trawler in terms of comfort. So stores, this is how much space you have. This one's a clear winner. I mean, part of it's the size. Well, it's probably all of it's the size, but you know, in the forepeak, you have a massive room with lots of storage. So like any spare parts, tools, everything is there. Walk in, it's like I could walk in. It's you know, 6 foot, at least 6 foot high. Lots of space, and then you've got, you know, plenty of cold storage space. You've got these massive, basically you drop down with the ladder, these massive storerooms. There is just space all through this boat in the cabins, so you're never going to run out of space as well. You've got this big back deck, you know, you can see here, it looks like a pretty traditional kind of a boat with a, you know, again, a keel. But, you know, if you wanted to, you get sea kayaks on this. You could get skidoos on this, you know, a lot of different things. There's, you know, a huge amount of space. So the possibilities. So if you wanted to do some, you know, real expedition stuff and have your Zodiacs and your kayaks and God knows what else out there, you know, this is a boat you could do. And like I said, it's got a massive range on it, and you can really load it for, you know, weeks and weeks at sea. So this one wins. It's just, the other two just cannot compete at all. If you watch the Nordhavn videos, and this is nothing against Nordhavn, it's just the size of the boat. You watch any videos of people doing their preparations, they have spare parts under the sofas, you know, in little nooks and crannies, and you know, it's nice to have a big boat where you can have everything organized, labeled, you know where it is, something breaks, so you go and you get your part, and off you go, as opposed to, you know, either having a list and looking up on the list and then opening up the sofa to get your spare water pump or whatever it is. This is so well laid, you know, brilliant. I really like this. So reliability and redundancy. So this is really about, are you going to break down? So your first defense is have reliable equipment on board so it doesn't break down, and redundancy is really your second line defense. If you do break down, what have you got in place to compensate for that broken equipment? So the first one is really important. So the reserve power. The trawler has no reserve power. So you've got a single engine. It's a big engine. It's pretty reliable. Should not break down. Well, we'll get that in a second. It's an older engine. But still, you can have bad fuel. Things can go wrong. You know, you've really got nothing to bring you home at that point. And finding somebody to tow you on a boat this size in the middle of the Atlantic could be problematic. I mean, the good news is you've got all that storage space, so you're not going to starve. You should be okay. But that could be a problem potentially. And again, if you're going to do like really big trips, you may want to think about things like that. So the Altena, it's got 2 engines, so fine. This is where you need to be careful about how you manage your fuel. So if you do have bad fuel, both engines can be, you know, stopped due to the bad fuel, and then the second engine doesn't really account for much. But that's maybe a different way of approaching it. But if one engine, for whatever reason, does go kaput, breaks down, theoretically you've got a second engine you can run on. But I really like the Nordhavn setup. This is my absolute favorite. Like a nice, solid main engine designed for continuous operation, and then a wing engine which just sits there. Hopefully you don't have to use it, but if you do lose the main engine, you can use the wing engine. You'll limp home, you know, probably maybe at half the speed what you did, but you'll get there. Now, especially if you've got a separate tank with good fuel, just in case, you know, you want to do your risk analysis on this. So if it is a fuel issue and you can't get the main engine running again, at least you've got a separate fuel source. So that's my favorite. So the hours on the boats, on the trawler, you got 12,000 hours after revision. So that's been after it's been fully pulled apart and rebuilt. So that's starting to get up there. This is going to need another rebuild. So it's a rough rule of thumb, but around 15,000 hours, you probably need a rebuild. Or maybe it needs a rebuild now. Don't know. Whereas you look at the other boats, you've got 1,900 hours on the Altena, so it's quite low. And it's interesting on these boats, especially a lot of Dutch boats. You know, people. I'm sure it's in the USA too. People buy boats. You know, they use it a few weekends a year, and it doesn't really get the hours up, and that can be problematic if it's not well maintained. But if they're not being used, but they're being serviced every year, great. You shouldn't have a problem. The Nordhavn, don't know. They didn't have the hours. It had done a 20,000 nautical mile trip. So the engine could be a bit spanked. So don't know. I'm guessing the hours are going to be up there on the Nordhavn. So the winner is ignoring the engine hours. I probably should give the Nordhavn. I'm not sure why I gave it to the Altena. So I'd say 1 Nordhavn, 2 Altena, and the 3 the Trawler. The Trawler just basically due to the age and no redundancy. We'll get on to sort of what you could do if you were to buy either of these boats. But the Nordhavn, assuming the main engine has a reasonable number of hours, been well maintained, with the wing engine, absolutely the best setup. But I think it's equal first due to the assumed engine hours. So you had $1 million and you buy an Explorer yacht, and these were your three options. What would you do? So on the Trawler yacht, it's been on the market for a while, and this is really important too when you're buying the yacht. See if you can get some statistics on the page. Find out when it was first put up, either if you got some people who good with internet stuff, see if they can get some data on when the page went up, and find out. This one's on at least a couple of years, and I admit it would be a hard boat to sell. It's going to be a very limited sort of market for a bunch of reasons. So the first bit will be negotiate the purchase price, because I think on the first one, you know, on the main trawler, you're going to have to spend money on it, and it'll be worthwhile if you can really get that purchase price down significantly. You know, if you get, I don't know if they would take, they want $495, would they take 300, 350? But if they did, you know, that could potentially repower the engine, repower the yacht, and get you a new, install a wing engine in there, for example. So, you know, maybe you don't need $1 million. So the thing, you know, regardless of price, I think you would need to repower this. You would also want to upgrade the electronics. They've been around for a while. They probably still work, but there's a lot nicer stuff out there. And the other option, this would be optional, extend the pilot house at the top, right? So you've got this massive back deck, which is probably not going to get used so often, because I would assume to get up to the top deck, it's a pretty steep staircase. So, you know, you're not bringing food or drinks or entertaining out there, just because the logistics of getting all your party equipment up there is you know, it's steep, not easy. I think you know, most of your entertaining on this back deck. I think you just walk straight out with no steps from the saloon. So the question is, would you put something there? So you could either extend it. So this is, you've got the steering at the front. You've got like navigation table there. So this is all full cabin. But if you extended this, you know, maybe you could put a second sort of saloon area, TV room, lounge, open doors which go, you know, all the way out to a small deck. That could make the boat more livable. So you make downstairs sort of an eating kitchen, different things, and upstairs could be a bit more relaxing. And if you're a couple on this boat has been used by an older couple, just the two of them, you know, you might want to spend some time together. You may not, you know, but at least want to spend some time together. So, you know, you don't have to be sitting upright in a navigation table to talk to each other. You can really change, you know, how you use a yacht. So I think, you know, if you did that, you could probably repower, upgrade the electronics, maybe extend the pilot house for, you know, 500,000 euros. You should be able to. And that's a real budget, go anywhere Explorer, big boat, safe boat, lots of distance, everything you need on board. You know, for $1 million, that would be an amazing, absolutely amazing boat to have. Altena here, I think you'd buy it, you'd do nothing. It's not really a cross-ocean yacht. Like I said, you could do it, but I think this would be more if you wanted to see the Med, go up to the Nordics, things like that. It'd be a really great boat for that. And you could do, you have to see the height with everything down, but I'm guessing you could do a lot of canals and the big rivers in Europe. So that'd be a nice boat. So if that was your goal, you know, just buy it. I really think you have to do nothing on it. It's been well maintained, low engine hours. So the Nordhavn, I think you'd buy it, you'd refit it somewhat. It's getting a bit old now, 23 years. You have to have a look at what work had been done on it. And again, just without knowing the engine hours, that would be the first place to start. And you may want to just take it out and go through all the systems, check all your through-hole fittings, your electronics, just everything, and get it set up. And if the interior is a bit tired, just change some upholstery, do a few things to make it your boat, and you could definitely, I'm pretty sure, like, it'd be a relatively inexpensive job. So, and I'm pretty sure you could do that for less than $1 million. So, for me, I would not be in the market for the altena. It would either be the Nordhavn or the Trawler, and it's a really difficult, would be a very difficult decision for me, because when you really get into it, it's every boat's a compromise. And on the one hand, the Trawler has some things that I really love. On the other side, I really love the look of the Nordhavn. For 2, 3, 4 people, it's a great boat. The Trawler's steel, I prefer steel, but again, Nordhavns are built pretty tough. It's got the wing engine, so it would be a hard decision. Unfortunately, I'm not in that position today to do that. Hopefully soon. But yeah, so just to give you, so I mean that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. This is really just to give you an overview of at least how my mind works in assessing boats. The really key thing there is to what do you want to use it for, what's important to you. Try and build a hierarchy of those needs. Is it safety, then distance, whatever it is, and try and assess, get all the information you can to assess it. Ultimately, you need to visit. If you are interested in any of these boats, you need to do a lot of research online, see if you can speak to owners like the N62. They've been around a while. You could probably find an owner who'd be willing to talk to you, and they can tell you the good things and the negative things of the boats. The converted Trawler, I think you'd want to have a good conversation with the owners, not just the broker. A little bit biased, you've got to be careful. I think most people selling boats are honest, the owners at least, and get your surveys done. Take it out for your sea trials, different things. And I even thought for the Trawler, if you could, for example, do a charter with the owner, pay them to go out for a week. I don't know, go to the Azores back, or do some trips up to Scotland or the Nordics or somewhere, just to run it through its paces, so you get to know the boat and the feeling of the boat. That's really important, because once you've got it, it's yours. You need to know it. And I know buying a new boat, when you get on board, it takes a while. I would say it takes about 6 months to get to know your boat at least, and there's always something to learn. So buying a boat in this magnitude, if you're going to spend a lot of time on it, you don't want to just look at it and buy it. You really want to take it through its paces. So if it's possible, to do sort of some longer trips on it, and if you've got to pay to charter the boat, then do so if that's a possibility, because it may cost you a few thousand, but you could save yourself a lot more money than that. So there we go. Hopefully this video was a little bit more structured, less just random searching. And thanks very much for watching.